Okay, welcome back to DB's Retro NTB workshop. And you know when there is a parcel on the bench with character sets like this, your addiction for retro parts has probably gone a little bit too far. This is just a generic box, but it has come all the way from Japan. I've been waiting a few weeks with trepidation, mainly because this is probably the second biggest investment I've made. More than some of the entire bikes on a particularly rare part that I wanted for the next build. And this video is going to cover off the restoration of this object because it is not in NOS condition. In fact, it's not really in any condition which would merit putting on a bike just yet. But what we're going to do first, we're going to unbox it, reveal what it is. This priceless piece of trinketry and hardware and engineering from a bygone era. And yeah, so this I was searching for, it's a crankset. I was searching for a crankset of retro kind of provenance. Had to be the right year, had to be the right I guess level of to warrant going on the build that I'm going on. It's a bit of a dream build that I have planned next. All my builds are dream builds, but this is another one of those with a story behind it. But more on that later. This is more about this componentry. So let's unbox this. I'm not doing such a great job, mainly because I still haven't got a tripod and I'm using one hand. Nonetheless, here we go. So it's a crankset, one which is reasonably uncommon and difficult to find, which is why I ended up, I caved in and paid what I needed to pay, because they just don't become available and they're not really on the market. But it is a Syncros Revolution crankset, and so this has come all the way from Japan. God knows its provenance before that. Possibly it was in Japan. Triple chain set, pretty standard stuff. Steel arms. I'll get into that in a second. It has this quite unique sort of aluminium solid plate, which backs onto the small ring. And apparently the provenance of these stamped letters mean that is the serial code, which is the early models. This was stamped in there. Later models, I think it was stamped in the arm. But what you can see here is that this is very much a refurbishment job, which is why I was so anxious, I guess, about the purchase that I'd made. Let's just put that here. Let's just get the other arm out. So it's a let's get rid of this. So we're going to take it apart. We're going to break this down. It's actually fundamentally in very good condition on first view. But what is obviously interesting about these cranks is that the steel arms mean that as soon as any paint starts to flake off, oxidization or rust starts to appear. But fundamentally, that's just surface, and I can deal with that. So the idea is we're going to strip these down, get them clean. I've actually got some replacement Syncros bolts and spacers as well, should I need them for some of these componentry. But they're all actually in pretty good condition. And then, of course, we're going to strip these. We're going to paint them. I'm going to get some new decals, replacement decals put on. I mean, and some people would say, well, the battle scars, that's what it's all about. The ripped jeans approach. I know some of my followers on Instagram have talked about the ripped jeans concept, the battered and beaten, and the patina. But, these are just disgusting. And no build can have parts on it like this. So if this needs a refurbishment, it's not going to get any better on its own. Some people might say that's heresy to refurbish. I don't think so. I think to give these a second life is the right thing to do. And these surfaces are all great. The square taper still has its edges, and so these should come up really well and almost look brand new. And can't wait to get them on the build. Of course, there are other pieces of componentry as well, destined for the build in mind. So we have some brother and sister parts that are going to come together. These obviously you've seen from my Instagram. I've already replaced these. I'm still in search of a bolt and wedge, the Syncros one, because this had it missing when I got it. These bars are a more modern version of Syncros. They probably won't be staying. They're just here for effect at the minute. But they are a desperate second place once the build starts to happen. But the build's going to take a few months because we've got other parts of that planned. So yeah, so we're building a nice little collection here of Syncros jewellery, and it's going to be something to behold. So anyway, first job is to take these. We're going to strip this off. I'm going to measure this logo to make sure I can get exactly the right size from Retro Decals, send off my request to him. The replacement spaces and parts and bolts are going to arrive. If I need to use them once I'm stripping this, I will use them. If not, fine. And then we're going to take this down. I'm going to strip this back. The metal is actually in really good condition. It's really just the paint, and so I think underneath we should get a good smooth finish. There's no nicks or cracks or splits or gouges in the actual material surface, so it's really just cosmetic, which is good, because for me that's all I can really manage. Yeah, so join us a bit further down the process when I've got these apart and started stripping. Okay, so everything taken apart now, and still no horror stories, no cracks, no major sort of bolts that won't unthread or have been where the thread's been damaged. So everything's looking pretty great, and the next stage is really to start attacking this paint surface, which again is purely cosmetic. So I'm going to go at this. I've measured the decals, ordered those from Retro Decals already, and I'm going to now have a go at these with an 85 grit to begin with paper, see how that goes, then to a 140, which is how I normally, what happened when I worked with the stem and how I worked with the pace. I'll see 30 fork legs as well, and it kind of went pretty well. So again, black is in many ways difficult to deal with, but also some ways from a colour match point of view is pretty simple. These actually often had a matte kind of matte finish to them. So the black paint I'm using this time is unlike the gloss I used on the stem. I'll be using a matte covering on this. So, but anyway, we're going to sand it down, see how we get to where we get to, and then we'll get it into the booth, the infamous booth. Okay, so here we are back as promised. We've stripped the crankset down, and good news is that other than the surface oxidization that was starting to happen on the crank arms, the other components that you see here haven't suffered in any way such indignities. In fact, I'd go as far as to say they're all in pretty remarkable condition. The chainring's very light use and will be no doubt returning actually to the whole chain set when I fix them back. They are an American brand, which is kind of in keeping with the North American build theme of the bike in its totality, but also for the chain set, I think fixing middle burn or pace rings would probably be a little inappropriate. There's a kind of American, North American, Canadian type feel to this. And these are Vuelta. They actually feel very similar, and the sort of the manufacturing of them and the machining of them feel very similar to a pace or a middle burn chainring. So they're going to stay, and they've cleaned up, as you can see, very nicely. They fit very well. Bolts wise, we have a replacement bolt set coming, titanium replacement bolt set. These spacers and screws actually, I believe, on the original Syncros Revolution cranks were like a two-part system which fed into one another, so that on both sides you have a kind of a flat head or some kind of head to be able to tighten or unscrew, whereas these just screw straight into here. I'm not entirely sure. Essentially, the replacement bolts did look different on inspection on the pictures online to these ones. Anyway, we'll see what happens when they arrive, how different they really are. I quite like the blue. They're going to fit with the new bigger build project of the entire bike. So I may keep those, or I may stick with the titanium ones when they arrive. So more on that in time, but more to the, I guess the most problematic area of these was the each of the crank arms, which was showing oxidization. Now, I'm not going to put you through the torture of the makeshift contraption and paint booth that has become reasonably infamous in some of my videos. I'm just going to now show you where we've got to with that. So here in the workshop, we stripped, sanded and prepared the crank arms, and then masked them up. Here's the remnants of all that masking, which was, you know, it's an old adage, but preparation really is the key. I probably spent, you know, an hour and a half preparing, masking, getting into all the intricate details of masking off around the edges of these crank arms, and then probably spent in total about 5 minutes actually spraying them and applying paint. But masking them off and making sure that all the surfaces are as smooth as you can get them are really worthwhile. And as was period and as was factory, the finish is this kind of satin finish. It's a satin black paint that I picked, and it seems to have worked really well. It almost gives like a powder coated look and feel to it. So, you know, I have to say I'm pretty happy with that. The decals have been ordered. As it goes, they're the same length as the stem decals, so that was quite an easy order to do. And yeah, so these I think are going to look pretty fantastic. You may remember the state earlier in the video that they were in, and so that's where we're at. And so looking forward to essentially decals arrive, decals will be applied, grease and fit all these bolts back together, unless the replacement bolts come first, and we'll do that. And then once the crankset's finished, that's another refurbishment done. But yeah, it's you know, that has gone remarkably well for a man with very few skills in this area. I have to say I'm pretty pleased with that, and these are going to look just the job. All right, join us when they come back together. And so here we are at the final piece of the jigsaw. So we have received the decals from Retro Decals, and they will be going on. I did measure the distance from here to the S on Syncros before I removed the others and repainted the arms. Oddly, 30mm from here, 18mm on the non-drive side. I guess there's no real accounting for why that is. And again, I do believe they were the original decals that were on. So we'll follow that principle. And you know, applying decals is always a bit of an art form. Part of it's a little bit of hope in making sure you get them perfectly straight. It doesn't matter how much I've found that even with marking tape, or you know, trying to find ways, ultimately you've still got to, with your hands, stick it on, put it down, and be committed that it's level, flush, straight, at the right angle. So I'm going to head on with that, and then when you join me back here, hopefully we'll be done. All right. There we have it. The final, well, kind of final version of these cranks, which, given the condition they're in when they arrived, I'm pretty happy with how they've turned out. Pretty easy to sand and paint. There wasn't too many blemishes or cuts or anything wrong. Back down to the metal, and yeah, I think they've turned out pretty well. The decals look good. The you know, to my mind and to my eyes, you know, these are a pretty special set of cranks. You rarely see them. They're bloody pricey when they come up for sale. I guess in some respects I've brought these back to life, and I'm not doing that with the intention to sell them. I'm doing it with the intention to ride them, and they're in good condition. So hopefully they will serve me for many more years, and certainly serve the build for which they are destined. But I'm looking forward to it. Again, along with some of the other components that we have and that I spoke about. The stem, of course, that we've already spent some time refurbishing. We're going to have quite a nice finishing kit of retro Syncros hardware, which to me really was, you know, really was set apart at the time. So I'm looking forward to getting all this together, getting it all on. And yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe, hit the like button. Any comments? If you think you could have done it better, then do let me know. Anything I missed out on. I'm a relative amateur, but you know, muddling my way through and learning as I go. So yeah, and hit the notifications bell, and next time there's a video drop, you'll be the first to know. Bye for now.